We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
So we were about a week out from Saddam's execution, and he knew it. He'd already got um, his marching orders. His sentencing, and everything was really crazy. I just remember I felt like I was in just a warp speed with everything. Um, and he started divvying up stuff, to deter his lawyers, because we would take him to meet his lawyers, quite often. And he started divvying up all this stuff. And I was actually one of his favorite. I talked to him the most, asked him a lot of questions. I was young, just curious and hungry for information. So I was his favorite. And so he started giving me his suits, his, socks made in Italy, like, I mean, just finer thing, like nice type clothes. And so he was like, "Well, try the suit on." So I'm like, okay. So I took my top off, and I start trying my suit on, and my squad leader walks in, and my platoon leader, which I can't remember. I feel like my platoon leader was there. He was there a lot, because he was the, you know, communicated from him, whoever he talked to way higher up.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't with the rest of the platoon, but I remember him being there. And they walked in, they were like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And sorry, I don't mean to cuss, but
Speak freely.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what they said. And
Yeah.
I was like I'm sitting there with this blue or black suit on. It was a dark color suit, like coat. It actually fit. I mean, a
Mm-hmm.
little long, but it actually kind of fit. I was a lot skinnier then too. I was like 160 pounds, but it fit. And I look back at him. I look back, Saddam sitting over there. And he just starts going, ha, ha, ha. Like almost like he's laughing at them. And squad leader, he was very serious all the time. Like he would very seldomly joke, like maybe like after something crazy or like after a couple of weeks in the field or something, he would like make a small joke, like in the field and everything, because he was a seasoned, he'd already deployed once or twice probably by this time, at least once.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like just like a no nonsense, no bullshit. Like me and my team leader, I could joke with my team leader or something, but squad leader, no, like he come in, I'd be like nervous because I didn't know what, he was, what was coming with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he pretty much told me to take that off and meet him outside. It was about as fast as I could ever move in my life.
Uh-huh.
And so I took it off, and I'd already had a bag of stuff. He like giving me boxes of cigars and like a watch, socks, like brand new. When I say socks, like brand new, like none of the dirty socks.
Yeah.
No Hodge feet sock, but like brand new socks, like watches, like I think like these cuffs, from what I remember. And then I'm sure there was a few other things, but I had like a bag of stuff. So I take the coat off, and he tells me to take it with me, and I walk out, and the lieutenant's like, "Put that shit right there. You ain't taking that shit." I was like it was a gift, like gift. I mean, it's not like it's a golden AK or like a gold
Yeah.
plated not like 45 that he shot his son with, but
Yeah.
um yeah. So I would have had a nice suit. Said I had to come back here in North Carolina and buy one from Built. They made me give all my stuff back, but yeah, he was wanting to leave his some of his belongings with me, which I thought was you know,
Yeah.
different team, different team, but at the end of the day, he appreciated what I was doing, and I respected him. You know.
And so that's like one of those things that a lot of people, man, they hear me talk about being positive or building rapport and stuff like that. Sometimes you're just given an assignment where you're stuck with someone, and day in and day out can be absolutely miserable, or you can make the best of it. I like to think that you had a slice of history that was kind of handed to you, or you were, picked to do. And then at a very young age, you're sitting there with Saddam. I think what, 8 hours a day was a shift or whatever, but you're sitting there guarding Saddam, and at some point can start to interact with him. And I don't know, that kind of blows my mind because I knew you for a while before I ever knew anything about that. But what
Yeah.
was it like at that early on in your career or in your enlistment to be then going, okay, this is like public enemy number one, and the military's got this guy. And now my job, day in and day out, is to guard him.
I feel like I knew, he was obviously, public enemy number one, but I was young. I feel like I was naive, so I didn't really like grasp the full effect,
Mm-hmm.
of what I was actually doing until probably like 5 years later. Probably almost by the time I got in the military, I was like, God dang, like I did something kind of important,
Yeah. Yeah.
which at the time I was in the military, like I thought I was high speed.
Mm-hmm.
Like I done been to air assault school. Like I was like, bro,
Right.
like that's kind of like being, I was like Delta almost, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Almost there, right?
yep. I got some buddies that were in, different units like Marshall and stuff all the time. And I tell
Yeah.
them, I'm like, yeah, but you didn't have air assault school, dude. Like
That's right.
that's 11 days of your life that you can't get back.
That's right. That's
And
right.
they pick on me all the time, call me air assault. But so,
Yeah.
it's it's mixed. So I kind of knew that it was important, but then again, it didn't really click.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't really click at all because a lot of it, for a long time, it was, I was there, did that for about 6 or 7 months on the deployment.
Mm-hmm.
And most of it was we would take them to IHT, the Iraqi High Tribunal, which was court.
Okay.
We would stay below the courthouse and we would stay there with his other, with Chemical Ali and his stepbrother and his little 4-star general. They were, I don't know where they were at. They may have just stayed there.
Mm-hmm.
I know that when we would meet at IHT, they would just be there. And then I would meet up with like second platoon. They were there, because they had them. So I don't know where they had them at. Maybe they had them there. Because I do know there was a squad of that had, IHT was their baby. So we kind of, when we would get there with him, they didn't communicate with him. They were like, no, first squad, that's Vic is theirs.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go, you talk to Vic or go through Vic, you talk to him, you go through first squad pretty much. But,
Mm-hmm.
anything as far as operations with IHT, we went, we pretty much, asked second squad what happened. But it was the best mission
Mm-hmm.
I ever had. I was like a guard, like I was chilling. We got to go to whatever chow hall we wanted. So when we went to go get chow, we would make a chow run, at IHT, the chow hall was so nice because it was somewhere, where a lot of important people stayed. So the chow, when you got around important people, chow halls are better.
Yeah.
So that's how, when, I'm 20 years old, like if I was like, man, there's like an embassy with a panini maker, like I was like, ah, bro, like that's winning. That's
Yeah.
winning.
Yeah.
So I just know there was a good chow hall at IHT.
Mm-hmm.
And then where we stayed at, on the outside was a bombed out palace. You can go on Google now and look at it. And it's got like a little drawbridge. They got pictures of it and they got soldiers like, 5, 6, 10 years later, like posing in front of it. Where we stayed. But at the time we stayed there, there was an infantry unit, I think that, or mechanized unit that guarded us, but
Mm-hmm.
they probably knew who they were guarding, but they didn't actually know who they were guarding. They probably had
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they had a good suspicion. I'm sure it leaked.
Like through the Joe rumor mill, they were probably like,
Yep.
oh. Mm-hmm.
But we would leave there and like, make chow runs, like just getting plates, for, if you were not on duty, then you would just go and like take a truck, go, in your little PTs and your little pistol pouch and drive to the, work out at the gym
Mm-hmm.
or, go to the chow hall. And we always fed Vic. So at the chow hall, we would get something for him. We would kind of tell him what they maybe had that day. And the breakfast, it was always the same thing: egg whites with jalapenos and lots of cheese and fruit. He loved fruit. And so we'd always get him an egg white omelet with cheese and jalapenos. And I'd always like make a joke with him. I'd bring it back. I'd be like, I got bacon in there too, Vic. And he'd just shake his head at me. So he had a pretty good sense of humor when I'd mess with him. I've always been the jokester, if you can't tell. Like
Yeah.
from high school all the way through, like getting in trouble in the academy, like basic whatever. I was a jokester. Like I just always
Yeah.
got in trouble for joking.
So
So
so when you're saying Vic, so everybody knows, you're talking about Saddam.
yep,
So you're
yep.
you're
We called
guarding
him Vic.
Saddam. Y'all
Yep.
called him Vic. Um,
HBC one.
okay. So he dug omelets, jalapenos. Like, was that y'all's introduction to his diet, or was that
He was already on that.
he was already
He
on it?
just yep. So we ripped. I don't even know what unit the squad we ripped. Who had him before us?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, when we ripped that unit, um, they kind of told us a few things, but it was very fast. Like it was a day.
Okay.
Like we were there for like a day, maybe two, and they were gone. We were in, and so we would have to, talk to the Turk, and he would tell us like egg white omelet, jalapenos, and we'd go fetch his dinner,
Yeah.
bring it back. Like I know in the book they talked about like Doritos and chips and stuff like that. I've never seen him eat that crap. Like he liked
Okay.
fruit. He liked,
Yeah.
chicken and, stuff from the chow hall. He didn't mind it. I mean, obviously it was chow hall food. It wasn't the best.
Mm-hmm.
He did like going to IHT too because the chow hall food was better.
But did he like when you're sitting there day to day, or like when you're joking around with him and stuff, even though you're going through an interpreter, you got a little bit of a language barrier. Could you still read his facial expressions? I mean, like, was he just pretty like laid back when he's talking to you, or could you register like, okay, he's getting my jokes, or he knows like
So
I'm
the first few weeks, um, he would just have the dumbest face. Like you'd say something, he'd be like, look at you and then look at the Turk. But after
mm-hmm.
about 3 weeks and he got to know you, seeing you, multiple shifts, there's days, swings and mids, 8 hours. It was only a squad of I think we had 3 teams.
Mm.
Oh wait, we had 4 teams. Yep. Yep, because the squad leader had two Joes. So yeah, so there was 4 teams for 3 shifts. I think you'd get a day off every other day or every other 2 days maybe, which the day off was like 8 hours.
Yeah. Right.
Um, but so I'd say after about 3 weeks to a month,
Mm-hmm.
then the Turk, he would, he didn't come like every day.
Okay.
Like, like he generally came with like lawyers and he'd be kicking it back with lawyers. Or, if well, the lawyers never came to where we stayed. We took him to meet lawyers. We'd always, drive somewhere to a LZ, get on a Black Hawk, land, have outer security, and we'd walk in and be there for 4 or 5 hours. We'd walk back out, get on a Black Hawk, flying back. Like we never drove them.
Okay.
So I'd say after, 3 weeks to a month, he started talking to us like normal. We could have a conversation where we would understand each other, but I think it
Mm-hmm.
was like a little bit of a trust factor.
Yeah. I would imagine, I mean, he didn't get to where he did in in his country and in the world by not being probably a pretty decent read of people. But I think after a while, that just goes to show like, this is your routine, dude. You know what I mean? Like you can put up the dumb face or you can act like you don't know what's going on. But eventually, the only people you're interacting with, you know, are your lawyers and these MPs or these guards, So eventually it's got to break down at some point. And it seems like once it started to break down, uh, he, he picked you as his favorite. Why do you think you were his favorite?
I think I was the most people person.
Mm-hmm.
Some people were serious. Some of the soldiers, had previous deployments and lost people. You know how soldiers can be angry, and they have
Yeah.
every right to be when you lose somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I was just the youngest, the most naive. I just asked questions,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just talking. I
Yeah.
and I just like in the civilian world, like when I first met you, and I was building rapport with different people. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just because I talked to them. I just was a person. I try to show some type of compassion, and I talked to them. And it's all out of curiosity. I'd ask them questions, being
Mm-hmm.
curious, and it just that catches some people, and they're like,
Mhm.
man, this guy actually maybe cares, or he actually
Mhm.
really wants to know about how my life is. And
Mhm.
I feel like that intrigues people. I feel like I think I've always had that, uh, that quality, and
Yeah.
I think that's what's helped me in, the civilian world.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. Like when you and I first met, and the funny thing is, you were the first person and the only like attendee. So let me back up. So everybody listening, you and I was teaching a game course in person. You're in the class. I don't even know if you remember this, but you're in the class, and I'm, going through some signs, symbols, whatever, tattoos. And I do kind of condition the students or the attendees to think everything is gang related. And then I threw a tattoo up there on the screen. And if I remember right, it was a Tory with like a 187 under it, which
Yeah,
you mentioned, I think earlier, aerosol or whatever, but there's a unit called the Roxons,
I was like, that
and
ain't
they,
gay.
and they use the Tory, and often, 187, which goes all the way back to their airborne regimental combat team for World War II. But I threw it up there, and everybody's always like, "Oh, so 187 means whatever California Penal Code for murder or what."
Hmm.
And you yelled out Rakasan, and I was like, "Fucking see me after class," joking around. And then we get to talking afterwards, and of course, you were already on the job. You were plugged in, working gangs in your area, and we just got to talking and cutting up. And at that point, I had no idea about your background in the military. I think all you basically said was, yeah, I enjoyed it. I got to do some really cool stuff. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we're right back to talking about gangs. And then through the next few years, like you'll come in sometimes at like gang intel meetings and give presentations or answer questions or speak on like what was going on in your area. And then we shared some connections with like different gang members, and you put me on a dude that was, and I won't get into the details, but you put me on a dude that was like plugged in with a really active, we'll say, gang at the time. So then when I'm teaching and telling people like this is where all the hard work goes in and making connections, like this dude is almost the way I would explain it, like you were almost on an island by yourself in your area, but working gangs during your assignment and making connections and people giving up info and that sort of thing. And so I was teaching other courses and telling people, hey, this dude's a prime example of taking gang information and knowledge and kind of having the spine to go out there and work it, even if you're on patrol or you're on a street, whatever team assignment, whatever. Start developing sources. Like, yeah, don't sit around and wait for someone to give you permission. And I don't know. I used to tell a lot of stories about those connections and that source specifically. And I know you know who I'm talking about, but I'm just kind of saying like all of that went on for years before I knew that you guarded Saddam Hussein and that you were later like deemed his favorite. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah,
That was pretty cool.
yeah, I remember that was in Gang Encounters 1, and
Yeah.
I remember that was a good class. But if you're not voluntold to go to gang class for being like in a gang unit or something, because I was just a patrol, I was on
Hmm.
patrol. I did my gang stuff in between, B&Es, call for service, domestics, and but all those, gang members getting domestics. So
Yeah.
like you can use it everywhere you go. But
Yeah.
I was in Gang Encounters 1, and they made me wait so long to get in that class because that my agency at the time didn't, I guess they didn't believe that it was a problem or didn't care.
Hmm.
It wasn't, you know, it wasn't their priority, I guess. And,
Hmm.
I didn't want to be on like a DWI task force. I didn't want to, I didn't want to, investigate property crimes, chasing weed eaters. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to be in a gang unit where all I
Hmm.
do, and it's not even jumping out on gang members. I just want to do like gang intel, like,
Hmm.
an agency that, that me and you both know that you're very familiar with that has, in my opinion, they're, number one, number two in the whole, state. as far as their intel unit is just top of the line. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like no other. But so I was hungry for it. Gang Encounters 1 to me was all it did was make me hungry for Gang Encounters 2. It's kind of like that infomercial that once they got you like they get you on that one, and you're
Yeah,
like, I
yeah,
got to go to the next one. And so I
yeah,
was just,
yeah.
I waited and waited, and Gang
Mhm.
Encounters 2 is a week, and your agencies are like a week long course. Come on, I mean, who,
Mm,
you got an area, you're
mhm.
putting us in about a week long course, and I'm like, man, I really want this course. I already got this course. Like, let me use this course. Look at this. I got an Excel sheet, and I got over
Yeah.
400 people. I've validated over 100 in the last
Mhm.
year, like
Yeah.
validations. Like, I'm investigations calls me when there's a shooting, and I'm a patrol guy
Yeah.
because I got the plug as far as certain in my area.
Yeah.
No one
Uh-huh.
else can go up there and knock on the door and talk to them. I can go up there in a
Yeah.
marked car to a
Mhm.
gang member's house and knock on the door and ask them, what's going on, or
Yeah.
what, this in a uniform.
Mhm.
So
That's the
most of the
power. Yeah, but that's the power of it. Like I and we've talked about it, but like I want to put my fist through a wall for people in my own department and the surrounding agencies of like the more we're identifying, the more we're presenting on, and the classes that I'm teaching, the more connections I'm making. And then people leave the training, they go back to their home jurisdiction, which could be close, like bordering, or it could be 4 or 5 counties away, or different parts of the state. And then they're reporting back like, yeah, man, you taught that little block on 5 Deuce Hoover Crips, and I jotted some notes, and then lo and behold, here I am in a traffic stop, and I start building rapport on a dude, and the next thing I got a gun or drugs or whatever. And it's like, yeah, the more everybody starts to know and share the information, it's like it's everywhere, and people listening, you've heard this show and you've heard me talk about gangs probably ad nauseum, but you also hear our voices, and we're from the South, and we've been in law enforcement for quite a long time. It's everywhere throughout the South, and it's LA based, it's Chicago based, and it's New York based. But when you attend training, or when you attend like intel meetings, like when we were having those big meetings, we're sharing information, and then people go back to their home jurisdictions, a lot of higher ups don't want to hear the gang problem. You know what I mean? Like they don't necessarily want you out there identifying or validating 100 to 400 gang members, because now they got to come up with a strategy, which you and I both know. We know the strategies, we know how to address it. It's like we can build it within each department and let people go to work. And it's actually the best type of police work, because it's not running and gunning and throwing people on the ground and what the movies make it out to be. It's just like you talked about earlier. It's like building rapport, identifying, being able to articulate through, you know, um, set elements that this person is a validated gang member, which in essence means they are a career criminal. And then even from that, we'll prioritize to, I got 100, identified, but which one of those are we going after on the proactive side because they're the most violent? Or we get information, that they're gunning for an officer or a deputy or an agent. It's like, man, this work right here is like really, really rewarding. I do, I remember when we used to do those intel meetings and stuff, and we'd all get together, and people would be like, y'all are running a 2-hour meeting, like nothing can get done in 2 hours. And we're like, shit, if we if we did 4, it would be, you know 10 times better. But I can remember when you and I were going to like meeting up at like different parts, like different counties and stuff. And one county in particular that I'm thinking about, I had to sit down at one point with another buddy, another detective, and go through all of our validated gang members. So we're talking about a few thousand, and go through and pull their last known addresses, because the area you and I had gone to for an intel meeting, we had met up there in a different county, and had gone through and had to pull those last known addresses and places we could validate. Hey, this is where they're putting their heads down. And I don't know, we had pulled 200 or 300 addresses to show these guys are validated in our city, which is a large city in the South. They're committing crimes here, but they are driving and putting their heads down in this county. And that list got handed over to the sheriff in that area, the district attorney, if I remember right, and then some of the chiefs in the local agencies that were at that time like very, very small. But it was a way to try to show, hey, this stuff is going on in our city, but it's also going to spill over in your county. And you've got representatives from your agencies and departments attending these intel meetings. Listen to what they're telling you. You know, like if you go back to your agency and you're sitting there explaining to them, hey, I just went to this intel meeting and we got a lead on these 3 guys that are part of this organization are living in our home jurisdiction. Why are we not focusing on that? Why are they not on the radar of the drug unit or a proactive unit? Or, you know, if you're fortunate enough in an agency to have people in like federal task force and stuff. But I don't know. I often still talk about that in virtual classes and bring up those examples of how to build those intel meetings, how to share that information, but also be that person. Like if you called me back then, I'm like, yeah, I got you. I'll get that info to you, or vice versa. If I ever asked you for info, you always hook me up, and I could trust it was accurate. You know, there's some people out there to be like, oh yeah. And then they make some stuff up and you're like, look, fool, I need you to be
If you
accurate.
don't know it, you don't know it.
Yeah. And just to stand behind it. Now, all right, let me back up. So before you ever even got into the cop world, you had to be a very young, aspiring soldier. Walk me through like how you joined the military, why, what your experience with the recruiters were, all that stuff.
Recruiters lie.
No, they don't. They're 100% honest, man.
100%.
Yeah,
100% don't tell you everything.
exactly.
So I guess it's not a lie. They just don't tell you everything.
Yeah.
They tell you the cool part.
Mhm.
Like, look at me. Like, look at that.
Yeah.
But my recruiter was pretty cool. He was an E7. I joined straight out of high school. My dad was in law enforcement. My grandfather was in law enforcement. Well, my grandfather was like kind of a part-time law enforcement, part-time farmer.
Okay.
So, I've always been around law enforcement. I've always like thought they were like, you know, the most respected, most, you know, like people looked up to them. So, you know, I'm not going to be in law enforcement out of high school. I wasn't going to stay around where I came up with, because I mean, it's just, it was in a downward spiral in that area.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for a young guy with no course, no set course, then
Mhm.
you don't know what, you don't know where you're going to end up.
Mhm.
So I knew I didn't want to go to college. I was working in a body shop. I knew I was like, I ain't trying to be in this body shop. It's hot as hell in the summertime. It's cold in the wintertime. Like,
Mhm.
which I work outside now, so
Yeah.
outside's nothing. But yeah, I knew I didn't want to be, you know, turning wrenches.
Mhm.
But I was like, college is not for me. You know, yeah, I wouldn't have done well in college. You know, sitting there, you know,
Mhm.
more school. I just got out of school. I've been in school my whole life.
Yeah.
So I joined the military, and the only thing I knew to do in the military, I was like, maybe I can be a military cop. You know, like
Mhm.
my dad and grandpa. You know, maybe they'll, like tell me I'm doing good. You know,
Mhm.
and I'm doing right. So I joined the MP Corps. Went to Fort Leonard Wood, OSET 1 unit training, basic AIT, all there. Started in August in Leonard Wood. It was hot as crap. Finished when it was cold as crap, like February, March time frame. I think it was February. It was about 7, 8 months, I believe. Yeah. We got our orders. They said Campbell. It's like, where's that? Like, you know, where is that at? My
Sounds
buddy that
exotic.
I joined the military to see the world. Like I'm
Yeah.
thinking I'm gonna be like going on a boat or something. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm like, I think I'm gonna see the world, you know? And my bunkmate, he's from New York, and he got bragged. And I was like, "Yeah, that's in North Carolina. Like, you can go see my mama." And I'm like, where am
Yeah.
I going? Like Campbell, when we look it up,
Uh-huh.
they're like Kentucky, Tennessee line. I'm like, I'm one state over from home.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm one state over.
Uh-huh.
So, I report to Campbell, and me and two other guys I still keep in contact with one. There's one still in. Uh, he should be retiring very soon. And I get there, and it's terrible. Like we're over there at the Rocky Sound barracks, and it's just this unit has been back from Afghanistan for about 10 months,
Mm.
maybe 8, 9 months, and they're the ones that are there are close. The ones that are gone, but like it is bad. Like they are rough
Mm-hmm.
on us. Like it is just nonstop. They are on us. Like you can't do anything right. Like you can't
Mm-hmm.
even sleep right on your day off on a Saturday. Like you've been in the field all week, you come back that Friday, you
Mm-hmm.
turn in weapons late Friday night, Saturday morning. Like, why ain't you at home with your family? You're here like banging on our doors, like waking up
Mm-hmm.
like this is harassment. Like, geez, bro, like let me live.
Mm-hmm.
But you just can't do anything right. I remember they're like, hey, every time you walk in, you just hear coins. They be throwing airsoft coins at you, like, because you're not airsoft qualified, so you're like always doing push-ups. Like you
Mm-hmm.
come in after like doing something in the field, been in the field for a week or 2 weeks, they throw coins, and you're like, man, I ain't had a shower in 10 days, man. You're throwing a
Yeah.
stupid coin in my face. Like you
Yeah.
never wanted to fight people so bad in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, but I know I got to go to airsoft school because I'm telling you what, I'm about tired of these coins. And
Yeah.
so I go to airsoft school and fell out the first time because I was late to class.
Mm.
Actually,
Mm-hmm.
no, I take that back. The second time is when I was late and got kicked out because I was out drinking the night before with my buddies. The
Mm.
first time, I messed up a sling load and got kicked out.
Mm.
And then they sent me back like 2 weeks later, and then I was late. And then after I got kicked out of airsoft school for the second time, like
Yeah.
on the count of me doing stupid stuff, I was like, I gonna put me in military jail. Like I'm going to
Yeah.
jail, bro. Like I am
Yeah.
terrible. They're
Uh-huh.
like, so this is about June now, and we're supposed to deploy September, October timeframe. Maybe July. I don't remember. I can't remember what month we left.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, hey, this is your last opportunity to go to airsoft school, and it's coming up in June.
Mm.
Um, I think we did leave in October, September, October. But they're like, we're gonna have a 4-day pass coming up, but you can go through either air assault school or you can go on your 4-day pass. I was like, I'm not deploying with you guys for a year with no air assault wings on my chest and
Yeah.
having to hear these coins and this harassment for another year. I was like, I'll see my family when I get back, bro. Send me to air assault school. So I went there that time, and I
Yeah.
was not late. I didn't party, and I studied my sling loads, and I went through and I made it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I will not come back without air assault wings. Um,
Yeah.
so
Real quick, crazy side story. When I was in the police academy, there was like what we would call them like senior officers. These dudes that had a couple years on patrol, and really, they had 2 or 3 years under their belt, but they were an active part of the city, so they had been in a lot of stuff. So you could tell the real officers. You know how it is, who would come through in the academy, like as they're walking through, and you're a recruit, and you're giving the greeting of the day, and you're doing all the stuff like by the book, and they're just looking around. They're like, look, man, let me tell you something, and they give you that like real cool slice of like police work, not treating you like crap. But this one dude, he would come into the gym and work out, and he was just locked on. And so he started talking to us one day, and he asked me, he's like, hey, man, like, what's your background? And I already knew in the police academy, like, I'm staying quiet. I'm going to treat it like basic training and fly under the radar. So I told him, I told him what my background was. And then he's like, oh, hold on, man. When did you go through air assault school? So I tell him. And then it dawned on me. I was like, hold on, dude. This is one of the instructors. Like, I think whatever you call it, like phase one or whatever the first phase was. But he was my air assault instructor, several years before. I was like,
no way.
what are the chances that, and he had a very specific last name that everybody kind of made a nickname. And it sounded very close to airborne. That's how I remembered it. But But then I remembered his face too. I was pretty good with names and faces. Anyway, we just get to talking and joking around. And from then on, and he ended up leaving our agency and joining another one on a federal level. But that dude was always getting into stuff like car chases and stuff and stolen cars. But he would always like help me out, give me information or give me, like pointers on searching people or whatever. But I always look back like, damn, dude, that's pretty cool, man. Because like
that was your plug.
Yeah. That was like early on, like where I started going, damn, dude, like there are some jerks that like walk through this academy and they're the same rank as that guy. Well, a couple of years on patrol. But man, they were arrogant and they treated us like crap. And it's like this core group of dudes that were like from the downtown area and from the Southeast district. And like that's where I want to work, man. Southeast, because like these cops are cool. Like one dude comes in, he's got dirty boots and his uniform's kind of a mess. And he goes over to the vending machine and gets a drink, like a Coke or whatever, comes over and props his foot up on the picnic table and just starts telling us stories about getting uses of force and stuff. And he's like, don't worry about your boots. Like that's when you're putting in work. That's what your boots look like in uniform. Like, damn, this is all right, dude. Like, I can dig this. Anyway, so back to you get your air assault wings and then you go on deployment.
Yep. Yeah, we deploy early fall. And we did a couple, little here and there missions, nothing serious, riding around waiting to get hit by IEDs and mess like that. And then the mission came down and we were like, okay. So we were an all male squad and we were all air assault qualified, but like maybe 2 people. So, that's the statistics for that was, in their mindset, they're like, okay, well, this is going to be a lot of Black Hawk missions and involved, like, as far as like moving Vic around. So, I think that was their mindset. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what they're, I don't know how much they looked into us before, you only hear about it the last second, like, hey, pack your bag, we're moving, to a different place for a different mission. And I remember the rest of the platoon and the other platoons were like, man, like y'all are doing it. Like y'all are just like y'all were it. And we were like, I was like, it's a bag of deal. I was like, I was kind of mad. I was like, I gotta go sit in a building. I was like, y'all are out riding, like leaving the fob. Like, I'm gonna be a fobbit now. So I was a fobbit for like 6 months, other than the traveling. But I was mad. I was like, man, I'm a fobbit, man. Like I don't even need my rifle. Like I put my rifle, like I didn't even have a rifle. I didn't even have to, like when I was with him, I didn't even have a gun. Like we didn't have guns.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I had a pocket knife. But
yeah.
Like no guns, no pistols, we didn't carry nothing in there like that. So I mean I'd have to leave our little area, like our inner fob, because it was like an a fob within the fob. So when I would leave our inner area, I'd have to like go like look for my pistol under my bunk so I could put it on and go to the chow hall because you had to have a weapon, So I was kind of angry at the beginning because I was like, man, I'm deploying, and I was like, I'm not doing anything. Like there's people out here like shootouts and like getting hurt and medevacing and like, and I felt like I was lesser of a soldier than the other ones that are actually getting into firefights and finding the bad guys. And I was kind of angry at first, and then once I got there, I was like, oh well, I guess it's pretty cool. I didn't really think, looking back, I'm like, man, I was so safe. Like other than the occasional mortar attacks, which that's like playing battleships. So that wasn't very ever like dawned on me that it was dangerous because I don't think it ever got anywhere close to me. So looking back, I was like, man, that's pretty safe. I was pretty okay right there,
Yeah.
But I was angry at first because I was like, man, this is not the high speed stuff that we're doing, we were, the practice village, at Campbell, Cassidy, we were doing stuff, we were like taking the bill, we were like practicing, like training in the field, and we had ops, and 5th group was teaching us stuff and teaching us room clearing and clearing houses, and like the group guys were so cool with their long hair, and like they were showing us stuff, and I was like, man, I dropped my blouse down on my boots a little bit, you know. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was like, look, man, they don't need blouse, they're boots. Like we got ours above our boots. I was like, so I used to try to get away with it, you know, like I think it was the third eyelet. You weren't supposed to be of your
Okay.
boot. You weren't supposed to be
Yeah.
below your blouse. But I
Uh-huh.
always pushed it. I would just bottom out my blouse. And I'd always get in trouble with my blouse. But I was like, man, I want to be like those guys, man. Like, you see how smooth they are? Like, I would practice my magazine, you know, changes
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, walking and, you know, in my mind, I wanted to be like them. And in my mind, I kind of was, because I feel like I'm pretty good at this. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like they never tell me, like they tell me they correct little things with room clearing. And, you know, for the most part, you know, I'm never the one in trouble. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they tell me good job or, you know, whatever. I was like, man, I am doing this. Like I know this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like, nah, I didn't know this stuff. They gave you the bear, like whatever,
Yeah.
like man, they like I'm at the front of the line going into the room
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a private. That's why I'm in the front. Like, bro, like, I thought like, nah, they're putting me up front because like I'm supposed to
Yeah.
be there. Like they need
Uh-huh.
me here. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
dropping fools if I need to be, you know?
Yeah.
And nah, I was strictly up there because the squad leader needs to be in the back because he's got to get the rest of the squad home when your ass gets dropped. So um
But that's good. That's a good mindset. Like you were like, hey, that's it.
I was high
Build
speed.
yourself up. Yeah.
I had my wings, I had my low blouse. Like you couldn't tell me
Yeah.
nothing. Like I think
Yeah.
I just got PFC. Like I had my little
Oh.
beret, my
Uh-huh.
wings. Like I thought like I was like a tabbed out, decorated war hero before I
Yeah.
even went. Like,
Yeah.
but they also build you up and make you feel like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like they're pumping you up, like you're getting ready, like you're about to deploy, like you got your wings, like they're
Mm-hmm.
starting to not pick on you or be as hard on you.
Yeah.
They lightened up a little bit, so you're feeling like you're actually like
Mm-hmm.
accomplishing something. Um, you know, so looking back now, I'm like, oh my, like I'm so stupid and naive. You could have told me anything, but yeah. So we're getting trained up. You know, the special forces guy at Campbell, like they're like so cool looking, like they do PT in a cool way. Like they wear their uniforms in a cool way. Like their weapons are cool. Like they got Harleys and like nice lifted trucks. And like I'm like, man, they are like doing it. Like, you know, and your mindset,
Mm-hmm.
that's everything in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I deploy and or we're deployed. We get the mission, and like I said earlier, like, you know, you meet Saddam, he didn't really want to talk to you for a few weeks. Then once he gets to know you, he starts talking to you. And you know, we were with him for, you know, several months. We would take him to meet with his lawyers and IHT when he would have court was in session. You know, we would, you know, there was like a weird swinging door when they would go into the courtroom. Like we would go right up into that point, we would pull the door back, so we would be hidden, he would walk out, and then we were right there. And
Okay.
they were like anything goes down in that courtroom,
Mm-hmm.
like from what I remember, I'm pretty sure like they're like you run in, you get him out, like we don't care like what you have to do to other people, but you drag him
Yeah.
out of there. Like
Yeah.
screw the other people, don't save any of them, like you get him
Mm-hmm.
out,
Mm-hmm.
which nothing ever happened. They had some yelling sessions and stuff like that. They feel like that was a one-sided trial. Like they already knew what they were going to do. I think it was just for show.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you got mass graves, I mean, it's kind of hard to.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
evidence is overwhelming with, you know, 600 people in a mass grave. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, so yeah, that
Now how did so you're seeing that going on, but also you're young. We all kind of watch the news, hear some stuff, you know, back then, but now you're getting like the point of view in the trial and you're hearing about the atrocities, but you still got to guard the guy. You're still building, or you still have that rapport, the kind of laughing and joking and stuff. But how did that affect you going through that trial and then still having to guard him and the way he was treating you, so to speak?
This may sound terrible, and people may look down on me for this, but it never changed my mindset. I thought he was the nicest person. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yes, he killed 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
That's, they've been killing people for thousands of years. It didn't bother me. I was like, he treats me nice. I treat him nice. I was naive. It didn't really click of how bad of a person he actually
Yeah.
was. And so it never changed my mindset. Like I was still locked on. Now, like some of the other people, like my squad leaders and the higher people, the people that have, done deployments before me, like they despised him, and he could tell it. Like they just,
Yeah.
they didn't really want to give him the time of day. Felt
Mm-hmm.
like, um, but I was young, naive, and I was there,
Yeah.
shaving every about 3 days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was a master manipulator, and so he knew like that, like, oh, well, my tricks don't work on these other guys because they're mean mugging me or they're not hooking me up with jalapenos or whatever it is. But that idea of, okay, here's this guy, and we have normal conversations, and kind of building on that. But then, like you're saying, it's interpersonal. Okay, he treats me right. Well, also you're young and impressionable, and I would have been the same way at that age. That's why I'm saying that, because you and I are very similar in that sense. When we meet people, however you treat me is how I'm going to judge you. You could do bad things to other people, but if you're cool with me, then I'm going to be cool with you. Now, the minute you decide it's no longer talking, or you're going to force me into doing something to defend myself, then, oh, well, now we're enemies. But until then, for the most part, I'm going to try and see the best in you. But seeing that now as a little bit older, I mean, when you throw out the years of like 05, 06, 07, and we're in 2025, and you can go back and reflect, and it's like this idea of, do you think that higher ups and whoever was pulling the strings put you guys in charge of guarding him every day to learn more about him? And I'll give you this example. I don't Have you ever seen the movie Silence of the Lambs?
Hmm.
Okay. So in Silence of the Lambs, the FBI in their infinite wisdom, they send in a recruit, a young, naive Agent Starling, to go talk to like the worst serial killer who is highly intelligent.
That's
And
the
they
female,
knew,
right?
yeah, that's the
Yep.
female. So it's like this idea of the behavioral unit. They knew, okay, if we send one of our seasoned agents, Hannibal Lecter's is going to shut down. He's not going to talk to them. If we send like kind of like dangling this person who's young, naive, eager, and will listen to Hannibal Lecter and whatever, it just might work. So I always wonder, and my wife and I have talked about this too. Um, do you think that higher ups at some point said, yeah, let's put younger MPs in charge of guarding him, and let's find out what happens? Like, is he going to open up and talk to them, or are we going to learn more about how a dictator manipulates people? I don't know. Did you ever think of that, or was
Nope. Too
yeah,
naive. Too naive.
yeah,
But
yeah,
but I mean, I will tell you, I mean, I feel like he did open up to me, and he told me some things.
hmm
I mean, I don't know if they were true. I never fact checked them.
hmm
He told me stuff about the president, that he had talked to the president before the war, and that he's like, man, I don't have what you're saying I have. Like, I'll open my doors and show you. Like, he
mm,
made it seem like there he was the victim. So that kind of makes sense as you
yeah,
say that, saying
hmm
like, hey, look, you know, this is only about, oil, is what he
hmm
told me. He's like, I told President so and so at the time
yeah,
that my country is an open country. If you want to come, and I will, if you want to come and look, send whoever you want to send to look around. Like, I don't have what you're saying I have. Like,
hmm
like basically, come look, leave us alone, let us be us.
yeah,
So he told me that, and I was like, that made me second guess, like, why are we here if it's really about that? I got
hmm
one president telling me about another president
hmm
as basically my commander in chief. So he's telling me this about the other president, like, you know,
yeah,
your grandpa and your dad always tell you there's a little bit of truth in everything somebody says. So it made me always think, like, why are we here?
Yeah.
So
And guess what? If he can capitalize on that and chisel away at that resolve,
he got me.
that's all he needs. Yeah, exactly. And now what do? You start to destroy the motivation from within. But in the gang world, the exact same thing. Ranking gang members will tell like a rookie cop, man, y'all always harassing me. Y'all always coming after me. They do the old, I ain't done anything wrong. Like, it's just me. And then a lot of times rookies will buy into that and they'll go, but that guy was cool. Why are we always harassing him? Like, fool, we're not harassing him. Like, that dude's putting hits on people and we're going to come for him day after day until we get him with a gun or drugs, because we're going to slow this stuff down one way or another. But that, like you said, like a little bit of truth of like this aspect, I'm going to paint this picture and say, I was cooperating. I gave consent to search my house. You know what I mean? Like the gang members about, yeah, search me. I don't have anything on me. And so then you start to read a little bit and go, okay, they seem like straightforward dudes, but that's crazy. So now you got to think about. So that went on. Well, let me get back to like what other kind of conversations like that. I think maybe I can't remember if we were recording yet or not. About he was a cigar smoker, like he was.
So that's another thing. So I would always get him extra ones, because they only really want to know a certain amount. His lawyers always brought him a box of them, but he had he was he smoked cigars every day, Romeo and Juliet's, and Cohibas, from Cuba, like straight from Cuba.
Okay.
And he also gave me some of those too. But so he would smoke them every day. If his Turk came or his lawyers came, that was their thing. He said, he would two more. So he wanted, like, if we were his guests and we were sitting there, smoking a cigar, they would, smoke a cigar. And every single time, so he used a box of matches, like a little square box of Haji matches. He would light that cigar and he would flip that box every time. Flip it like that right there. And he would keep flipping it until it landed on its side like this. Like it would have to land on its side like this.
Yeah.
And they have his little saying. So he would flip it every time until it landed on its side, and then he would lean back in his chair. It was like a old vinyl plastic picnic chairs.
Yeah, yeah.
That, and he had some pads taped on the armrest. And I'll send you a picture of it and you can put it up here.
Yeah.
And he would lean back in that chair. And there was some a high ranking officer would come to talk to him or whatever, or maybe nothing ever clicked there. Like, there was, some generals would want to try to talk to him, but they didn't have the clearance. I feel like there was a full bird that would come and talk to him from like what I heard, but he would never wear a uniform.
Okay.
He would dress down into something, and or he could have been an intel. I've also heard there was a CIA guy there that I never even knew was CIA. That I thought he was like a whatever to him, I don't even know. Like, I was too naive to pick up what was going on. But I heard that the Turk was a CIA guy, which if that was the case, he was really good in character. Like, oh my God, like I thought he was just from like Jordan or something. Like, that dude had it going on. But that's a rumor that I heard. I don't know if that's ever, I think they talk about in the book that I've never read the book. I've read a few things, and there were some, some things that weren't quite hitting on it. And I was like, no, I ain't reading this crap. It's not even 100% accurate.
Yeah.
But
now he had children that he wanted the best for, right? Even though he didn't always take care of people in his own country, to say the least.
Yeah, he believed in education.
Okay.
Yep.
Which brings me to what did he do with his kids?
So his daughter went to UNC Chapel Hill, is what he told me. He sent her over here to go to UNC Chapel Hill. I think his daughter at the time lived in Jordan, if I remember right. And obviously his sons are what you would call a true believers. They believed in what they were doing. They lived by the sword, died by the sword. So I don't think they went to college, but I remember his daughter telling me that, and then maybe someone a descendant of him, he also sent to a college. I can't remember who it was to him. But so yeah, he sent her to college. I can't remember what son it was, Kusei, but he told me about a story about how he disobeyed him. And when he disobeyed him, he shot him in the leg with a pistol to teach him a lesson. Like, yeah. Like that's. I mean, my dad used to spank me, but that's pretty hardcore. Like,
and you're like, if that is true, what he says, well, I mean, no wonder some dudes turn out the way they do. Like, father's a dictator, shooting you for punishment. I don't know, man. But then again, you wonder if he's lying about that, why is he telling you, and why is he lying about it? You would almost think he would downplay it, maybe. Like,
I don't know. Like, his stories never really seem like fabricated to me. Like I believed everything he told me. Like so he has one palace that's surrounded by a pond that I actually have I went and fished it and caught this like weird looking carp thing and looking catfish looking eel tail thing. But he had fish out there, and he told me about how he was going. They would throw the fish food out there, and him and his sons would be in the boat. And when they would fish with AKs. So when they would come up to eat, the fish would come up to eat. They would shoot them with AKs, shoot the fish off the top of the water. I was like, that actually sounds kind of cool, but yeah. So that's how he went fishing. He never had a Zebco fishing pole. He had a AK-47. But yeah. So he believed in education. He always told me that when I got in the military, I needed to go get my education. I was like, yeah, I can go to Chapel Hill too, man. Like, if offshore account, like, what your money looks like, like, let me get some of that money. I wholeheartedly believe, though, if he, obviously he didn't have any money at that point. They probably seized it or it disappeared. But if he would have had money in a way, I guarantee you somewhere in Switzerland, there is an offshore account with my name on it with money in it. I would bet you that he would have left me money.
And you would have gone to Carolina, dude? Oh.
No.
I
can't even spell Chapel Hill. What are you talking about? Chapel what?
That's the worst.
I wouldn't have went to Carolina. No.
No. You should have told him that. Like, when he's like, yeah, I sent my daughter to UNC Chapel Hill. Like, why would you ever do that? You could send her anywhere.
Well, I was kind of a Carolina fan. I ain't gonna lie, I was kind of a Carolina fan.
Don't say that, dude.
I grew up watching basketball, though. I liked, watching the Tar Heels play basketball. The football team always sucked. My best friend was a state player or a state fan, so me and him were always like, But now I don't even like.
Yeah, no, but like when you're a kid, that's what it was. It'd be like, the state of Carolina.
I just I like blue. Like, I like the light colored blue. That was my color. So
now that would have been after Jordan, right? Obviously, who was decent at Chapel Hill at that time when you were a kid?
Vince Carter, I remember.
Okay.
Yep, that time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of that era. Yeah,
like 2005, they won. I'm pretty sure 2005 they won. That's when I was getting out of high school, going in the military.
So like,
I'm pretty sure they won the championship in 2005.
So it was like Carolina and Duke were probably the.
Oh
yeah, the head to head.
NC State, they were still bringing up the rear then.
Man, they'll have a good year.
The NIT, baby.
Yeah. Okay, so then you end up. Okay, so after the trial, were you there at the ending of the trial or when the execution occurred?
Yep. So they were reporting that CNN. We were watching the news. I don't know if it was CNN. One of the news outlets that reported back here, was reporting that Saddam Hussein had been executed.
Okay.
And I'm sitting beside him. I was like, Vic, you're dead. He's like, the news. You never believe the news. You never can believe the news. And he told me that. He's like, never believe the news.
Okay.
And they were. I think I don't know if their timeline was off, but I remember we had went to IHT, and we also had free phones there.
Oh,
So I didn't have
okay.
to have a calling card to call my mom, but I couldn't, we weren't allowed to email
Right. Yeah.
or nothing like that. Or maybe we were, but it went through something and they checked everything, and even
Hmm.
our phone calls were like they listened and recorded our phone calls at
Which
that
makes
time
sense. Yeah.
because of who we were with, and knowing
Yeah.
if somebody was listening, they knew, then maybe you never know. I don't know.
Hmm.
Way above me, but I just told, my mom and dad, and I think they started figuring out what I was doing because I never told them. I never wrote a letter. I never told them on the phone,
Hmm.
but they would see like that he would be in trial, and I would, or when he wasn't in trial, that I wasn't able to talk to him for a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I told, one time I told my mom, I was like, hey, I'll try to call you again. I'll be more able to talk to you, in about a week or so. And I think her and dad started putting two and two together that something was going on with me. And that's why I wasn't able to, communicate with him as much.
Hmm.
But they locked us down. Like I remember, from what I remember, obviously, it's been a long time, but they locked us down um, closer to, you know, the uh, the time that it was coming up to, because they tried to get, the mission ready. They're like, okay, yeah, it's going to be like tonight. They're like,
Hmm.
all right, stand down, not tonight. They kept, they put that happened about a couple of days. So we were really, I mean, we're tired at this point. Like this has been going on a couple of days, in the middle of the night because um, it had to be done at a certain time before like the sun came up, from what
Okay.
I remember.
Hmm.
So we literally had to mobilize and be ready all night long and fly out at like 3 o'clock in the morning to get him there by 5 to the gallows and everything like that. And so to getting the gallows ready and getting us ready and getting us mobilized. So we, it's late o'clock at night. Tensions are up. The squad leaders are doing, no one knows what's going to go down. They're like, hey, we don't know what's going to go down. We're going to meet up with the, Iraqi army there and the Iraqi police. You can't have trust them. And they're doing squad like checks, and like some people are putting extra ammo in pouches and mags. And now like this is when I'm starting to get a little nervous. I'm like, man, this might get kind of crazy.
Hmm.
Um, like they're giving us smoke, like saying, hey, if this smoke pops this color, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna change and exfil this way. Um, just a lot of different stuff at you at one time.
Hmm.
And um so gear checks, getting ready to leave, and it's finally that time. Um, let's see. Yep. Yeah, they put us up like a day, they no, the next day no, and then next thing you know, they're like, okay, it's happening, and now by this time we know it's like midnight. So we don't even go to sleep. We got to stay up. We're hitting the rippets and
Hmm.
rippets and cigarettes. That's what we were living on. And we get we get the go ahead, we get in the truck, we drive, we hit the to the LZ, we get in the Black Hawk, they fly us to this place. I don't even know the place. And it was just at the gallows. I wasn't there.
Hmm.
Um and we get on a Rhino bus where they meet us at a LZ, they drive us, there's people on the bus. And this is, moments before his hanging. And I'm sitting next to him or right in front of him. And he we get there, the light come on in the Rhino bus, like an up armored, like kind of like an up armored shuttle bus. They call them
Okay.
Rhinos. I think they call them Rhinos. Maybe I may be wrong. It's been a long time, but the Rhino bus, we get there and everyone kind of gets up. Squad leader's there. He's kind of like telling this and there, and there's some other people there. But in my mind, the way I'm remembering is just kind of blurry. Like they don't really, I didn't know them. They don't stand out to me right now. I wouldn't know them from Adam if I walked by them, but there's some people there that I don't, they weren't never there, but they're there and they're not really in like a uniform type. So I don't know who they were or what they were doing, but my whole squad was there. And, he stands up and never one time did he ever cry. Did he ever get scared? Did he ever say anything? He said, this is God, basically he said, chopped it up as religion. He's like, this is God's will. This is what God wants. And I mean, straight up took it like a man. Like I would be probably bawling, like you're about to hang me. Like I'm probably gonna cry. I'm probably gonna be scared. Like, and never once did he ever bat an eye, nothing. He stood up and kind of like gave me a half hug and told me to take care of myself. And if I could go to school, go to school. He said, but he always thought, he really respected the military man. He, that you stood up for what you did in your country, kind of thing. So, said, like he kind of told me goodbye, and it kind of got me a little bit, man. Like I'm young, this is weird. I'm tired. I don't really know what's like. It's just everything's happening fast. And it probably got me a little bit. I can't remember if I doubt I just cried, but it definitely probably teared my eye up. Just and nerves, a lot of nerves going on. And we walk them, off the bus and walk them up towards the gallows. And we kind of got like a gaggle formation around them, like nothing like perfect rolling T or diamond or nothing, but we got kind of got gaggle around him, and we're looking at everybody because I've been protecting this man, standing in front of him, for 6 months. Like I'm guarding him. I'm looking at everybody like don't you even look at my guy, like wrong. Like this is my guy. You don't mess with him until you go through us. Like it's just it was a weird. And we hand him over. And, there's, they take him inside. There's a bunch of yelling. I'm sure you've seen the little Haji video from a cell phone camera where he's like yelling. He doesn't want to wear the hood, because they hood people up. He don't want to wear the hood. And, they're up there and he's like talking junk to him and then, says whatever he says to Yallah, Allah. And I can still remember, I felt it in my chest. When that gallows dropped, it sounded like a mortar hit. It was the loudest. And it like I jumped, like I felt it through my chest and I didn't know what it was, like a bomb or a mortar or something like that. And I just remember my one of the team leaders that is, was very close to me. Because I was just like I was the youngest, I was messed up a little bit. I wasn't like sitting there crying or something, but I was just like I was probably like frozen a little bit, if that makes sense. Like just not really responding. And pretty much he got in my face. He's like, man, right now, like, what I'm saying? Like snap out of it. And next thing I know, they're coming out and it's breaking daylight at this time. It was right about, before sunrise when it happened, and it's starting to break daylight. It's chilly. It's chilly out, and they're bringing out a stretcher. And I remember I can't remember who did it, but they pulled back, and I looked over, and I seen his face, and I was like, yeah, that's him. He's dead. And they're like spitting on him, like the IAs and the IPs. They're spitting on him, and like kicking at him, and like people are yelling, and like it almost sounds like they're mad, but I think they're rejoicing because these are the people that have lived under him and probably in fear their whole life.
Yeah.
And so then that happened. We get him, we secured him. I don't know, I may remember this differently. I feel like we secured him and took him to a detail that took him to his family for burial. That may be wrong. I don't think we let the IPs or IAs. I just can't remember that. That's a little, at this point, I'm not really, I just couldn't remember I can't remember that specific detail, but I feel like we escorted them from there to an LZ, and I think the L's like the whoever the 160th or whoever the aviation was flew them to meet to hand over to family for burial. I feel like maybe that's probably more correct. I can't really remember that part. I do remember some celebratory fire though outside. People knew what was going on around. There's like a city. I don't even know where we were at when it happened. Like we flew there in the dark. You couldn't see nothing. Like I had no clue where those gallows were. I went to it a couple of times, but we never drove to it.
Okay.
We drove a lot of places in Iraq, but never drove there. We always flew, so I had no clue where. I don't even know where it was at to this day. But I remember it kind of reminded me of like a greenhouse. Like it was like that green siding looking mess.
Okay.
Like you see like the green thin plastic roofing stuff.
Yeah, like corrugated. It's got like the ripples or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. But I have no clue in Iraq where it was at. We didn't have smartphones looking at GPS and maps and stuff like that. Like
it's one of those things like when you just were describing it, I think that older people like your team leader who's telling you to snap out of it, we're probably better geared at that in a sense. The older you get, especially man, like into your mid-20s and your frontal lobe and your brain is fully developed and you start to see life and people maybe in a different way, or at least learn to compartmentalize better. I would be the same way, I think, at that age, spending that much time with someone who is older, who is able to manipulate people, and then to have to live through that. That's the reason I asked that. Is just like, and people probably are hearing this and getting mad and frustrated, but I also feel like, man, as human beings, that's the best part about us is that even someone who's capable of atrocities like that, there's still a human side to us to where we make that connection and still feel that pain or something, or that
100%.
Yeah, and I do think that's one of our strengths in humanity. I think if we were all wired the same and we just didn't care, we wouldn't the world wouldn't be the way it is now, or at least certain countries wouldn't be that way. I think that like as an adult now, and especially like an older man now, I'm probably able to close it off on the face, like people would see my face and go, oh well, he's feeling nothing, and I can hide those emotions, whereas at your young age it may have been all over your face, where your team leader's like, snap out of it, you know what I mean? Like, but
I feel like I could do that now. Like I would be the one. I could be like with a rookie right now. Like if we had rookies, I'd be like, snap out of it. It's good, because you're seasoned, and that's where they were at in their life, and that's where I was not. I was the rookie. I was just not. Yeah. 100%.
So speaking of that, like, when you got into the police world and you started doing the stuff that you were doing, because you've been through a lot and still in it, like, did you see the newer officers, like you just mentioned, like the rookies, like the young ones kind of coming on and doing stuff in a similar way, or making those mistakes where you had to kind of tighten them up and be like, no, we don't, this is how we do things?
I would say after, where we worked, that was a little bit busier of a place, and you get exposed to more faster. But I would say that I wasn't that guy until at least 6 to 8 years in law enforcement. Because you're still, making a lot of rookie mistakes, when you're like, 3, 4, 5, 6 years on. I mean, you mature faster in law enforcement in that area, but I would say that, not like, now, which I'm not saying I know everything, but I feel like I'm a matured law enforcement officer that, um, handle stuff maybe a little bit different than somebody newer, and way better than I did back in the day of when me and you were working, and I didn't know everything. But yeah, I would say that I needed, for me, to mature and see as much as I did. I would say I probably wasn't there until at least 6 years. I may have acted like I was or thought I was, but I wasn't. I was not.
Yeah.
Not after,
Well,
not looking back now.
and I think probably that goes to you self-assessing and always trying to better yourself, like going to gang classes and going to different training and that sort of thing. But I bet your peers were looking at you and going, "Damn, this dude is locked on and knows everything." Because I will say that, like, I would talk to other people that knew you or ran across you, and they would be like, "That dude knows everything about gangs." Now, you yourself, and I'm the same way.
I
Like,
feel
I'd be
like I
like,
was
"Yeah,
like,
like I
yeah,
know a sliver of it. I need to learn more about this gang or this, criminal motorcycle club or whatever." But to your peers, people were like, that dude knows it. Or even better, people would be like, call him up because he knows the girlfriend, the baby mama, the cousin, like he knows all their inner workings, the vehicles they drive, all that kind of stuff. So I do want to say, I think a lot of stuff is applicable from the military to law enforcement in that sense. I think you were hardwired, probably the way you grew up, the area you grew up, the adults you were around were probably storytellers. They enjoyed people, they enjoyed sharing their wisdom. And so in turn, when you joined, that natural aspect came across. So then when you got that assignment and you're guarding Saddam, there's a lot to learn there. Then getting out and getting into law enforcement and that stuff kind of carrying over. What would be some advice that you would give to people who want to enter law enforcement now? And I mean, and it used to be you and I would say probably, back then we would talk about young people joining because that was kind of the trend. But shit, we got people now that are 35, 40 years old who are signing up to become cops. Um, what's some advice you would give anybody right now listening to this and going, I want to get into police work and do what they've talked about or anything? What kind of advice would you give them?
I would say police work is police work. Don't think that just because you're at a smaller department that you're lesser of a an officer than someone at a bigger department who is running and gunning all the time. You know, you know, criminals travel, crime travels, like they have to come through there sometime or another.
Mm-hmm.
I would say pick the best department that suits you and your family. Pick the one that obviously pays your bills and pays decent and benefits when you retire. Because when you retire, you're old and broken and you have all
Mm-hmm.
those problems popping up. And you want something that's going to be able to take care of you since you did what you did for so long. So I would kind of say chase the money and the benefits. Crime's going to be
Mm-hmm.
there. You're still
Mm-hmm.
going to catch bad guys. And I hate to say it like that. Don't be like, the community. I just want to, do this and that. The answer that all cadets give.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, man, you got to take care of you and your family. And that
Mm-hmm.
that may sound bad and or wrong, but I was with the agency that I was with when me and you were working together, and when I was doing what I was
Mm-hmm.
doing, and I was doing way more work for I feel like way less money in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I enjoyed it and I learned a lot. And you said that people said I was locked on and I knew everything. I just got lucky. I knew some answers to some questions at the time that they needed it when they were
Mm-hmm.
looking for somebody with warrants or what happened, and I was just in the right place at the right time and knew the right things.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I still to this day, I feel like I would need to go like look over some slides. Like if you ask,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I know the basic stuff, but I
Mm-hmm.
still don't feel like I know that much. And I'm probably rusty, because I don't do it as much now. But
Yeah.
um, I think
But if you
I
had
got
to,
lucky.
yeah, but if you had to,
Oh,
that's the
it
thing.
come back.
Like it would come back like that. The big
Oh yeah.
thing is you know how to build rapport, you know how to talk to people, and you'd be like, look, we got something new out here, and it's whatever, fill in the blank. That's the big thing. I agree with you about definitely benefits, and now especially when I retired and going, okay, like I got health insurance, like the things that you don't think about early on. You're just like, man, like I money was a little bit of a factor for me, but more it was the department and what they offered. And I was fortunate where I was. I really enjoyed that department and got to do everything I wanted to do. But now, over the last 10 to 12 years, there's so many different facets at departments. And sadly, a lot of stuff gets political, or the wrong people get hired to run a department. And then it goes way into like weirdo land where nobody's crime fighting. They're all worried about stupid stuff. And the main thing that really terrible leaders haven't quite grasped is cops are free agents. And these departments now are starting to kind of pick up on, oh, you could just up and leave and go to another department. And when you leave, you're going to come back and tell your former teammates and buddies, hey, come join this department. They treat you right.
And it's easier. A lot of places used to require academies, and you'd have to do another academy, or they do short academies. Now they're making it easier and transitioning because they need people. So it's even easier. Well, law enforcement is like it's a totally different animal nowadays.
Go ahead.
It just and I was going to say, just like like the gangs are totally different. You're not going down the boulevard and jumping out on two guys flagged up, talking to them. It's totally different. Color, like everything's different, totally different. I'd probably be out of the loop, But
yeah, and it's funny. I was just doing a virtual session last week and talking about that, how in our region everything's like stripped back to the basics. Everybody's just kind of wearing a t-shirt. Nobody's like really flagging and showing beads and necessarily wanting the world to know what sets they are. And then you go to other parts
in years.
Yeah, that's what I say. You go to other parts of the country though, where people will send me videos and be like, you see this on Instagram? And I'm like, oh, they're throwing it back, to 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So it's always just good knowledge to have. And, you bring it back up. But it's also funny too, to listen to the old heads who are really only like 25 or 30 and complaining. And they're so mad and pissed off at the young ones, because the young ones are like, I ain't listening to you. Like, you're not going to teach me how to make money. I just made 30,000 in this fraud, or, stole this Hellcat, or fill in the blank. I don't know.
Totally different animals.
Yeah. Now,
we're outdated.
No, that's the thing, dude. What's funny is we're not. Now, I might not be able to tell you what the neighborhood hybrid is in said county or city, but I bet you I can explain to you and teach you how to go into that area and learn inside of about 2 days how to identify every single thing in there and how to flip some of the people in the same way you do.
100%.
Yeah, it's like these skills have to get handed down or passed down. So I do appreciate you jumping on, man. I think probably you and I need to do an episode in the future about some other topics. I know you think like, you and I get into talking about some stuff, and we may even pick some gangs specifically and go into stuff for people. But
we didn't even get into that one gang that we worked for a while. We didn't even get into that.
Which one? Do you want to throw it out there or no?
I mean, yeah, if you got time, we were talking about it earlier.
I'm on your time, by the way, so we're good.
Yeah, the same guy that me and you, that I kind of put you on, and it kind of relates to the mission that I had in Iraq, because when I got that call that day, I remember where I was at. I was on vacation, and I got the call that day. I got some information. Somebody had hit me up. One of my people had hit me up and told me, and then your agency started calling and gave me the bad news. It was kind of like the bad news of when, like Vic's leaving. Like, this is one of my number one guys who is like up on the totem pole. Like, I worked a year to get this guy to like trust me. Like, and then I got him to trust you, meet you, come in, with you. Like, I'm like, I did all that work, and then he goes out and murks somebody. So I was like, oh, like, why am I doing this? Like, I just, everything I did and everything I lost is gone. Like,
it was one of those things, like, on that side, I had to be able to explain to teammates and other people that I only have one one perspective from this dude, this source, and it's never been bad. You know what I mean? Like, this dude's never been bad to me. He's actually transitioning in a different life, in a different like lifestyle, almost like he's growing up. You know what I mean? Like he's trying to do the right thing, and then out of left field, we have a body, and then we got to start working it. And
I almost didn't want to believe it. Does that make sense? I'm
no,
like, nah, he couldn't have. I know
yeah,
him. Like,
yeah, it does.
He works.
Yes, yeah.
He has a business.
Yeah. And that's the aspect that I explain to people in training without getting into too many details, but I do explain to people there are guys that grow up in a gang, and when I say grow up, they might be 15, 16 when they join. They're known to be a wild card. They do some crazy stuff. And then as they get a little bit older, they start to kind of age out, or they start to make better life choices. To me, that's what I thought he was doing, was just trying to make a better life choices based on family instead of gang stuff or drama. And you want to see the best in people, and you don't want to go, this is our number one suspect. Like, all arrows are pointing back to this person. So it is one of those things where I didn't want to believe that. I didn't want to believe it for him too, because I knew, hey, this is going to be really, really bad for him, his family, everything. Like it's going to bring a lot of stuff down on him. And I remember talking to people too in my team and saying, like, I know this dude based on you, like from this other agency, and like also saying this is the power of these meetings and making connections and teaching. Like we've been locked onto a lot of really good stuff and actually prevented some stuff based on that information. Now, people listening are going, why do you keep speaking in generalities? We kind of have to. But I do want to say that if you work sources or, informants, whatever you want to call it, and you can tap into gang members who put in work and can explain things to you and can also teach you how to be better at what you do it. I mean, that's the thing. Like, and in that realm, we were in a deficit. Like we did not have a lot of knowledge on that gang, or even that. Hell, there were like 13 or 14 cliques operating in our own city and in your area as well that were all beefing. You know what I mean? And so it was like to start to get some of this information, and then for it to kick that way. I don't know, man. That one always did bother me. Like I do not want this to be true. And in the homicide world, and I always tell people, like, at least my experience, we work the case, we work our evidence, we work witness statements, video, audio, whatever we had. And then you try to, like, exonerate, you try to clear whoever seems to be the suspect or suspects. And then you're like, okay, I can't clear the guy. Like, everything is coming back to him or them or whatever. And at that turn, man, it was just like, this is not good for him or for some of his people.
I remember I was like, when I called you or texted you, I was like, man, is this true? I was like, because he called me and he's like, he felt like, the agency was after him. He's like, man, they done stopped my mama, my girlfriend. Like, he's like, man, I didn't do like what they said I did.
Yeah.
And I was like, I hit you up and I was trying to arrange the civil, like, hey, meet up with him, that way man, they need to talk to you. You need to meet up and you can do it safely, or you're not having, your door getting kicked in.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, is it true to you? And you were like, man, the evidence is so overwhelming, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, yeah. And it was one of those things too that he didn't do as you told him. You know what I mean? In order to try to clear his name. That was kind of like my first hurdle of going, why is he not trying to clear his name? Because you and I both know in the gang world, if somebody thinks they are wrongfully a suspect, or they got to clear the name of some stuff they didn't do, in the real world, they would jump through hoops to clear their name. Like we've literally picked up the phone, call somebody and say, your name is right here as a suspect. You can either clear it or we can keep digging. And people will be like, no, where do I need to meet you? Because I got nothing to do with that shooting or that robbery or that murder or whatever.
They don't want you snooping around.
Exactly. So for people listening, like, know that like gang members want to clear their name because they know if they are mentioned as a suspect and they didn't do it, they can clear the name, and now that team's moving on to something else. If they don't clear their name, now you're digging into everything. Their drug game, they're selling guns, whatever they're into, human trafficking. They don't want you snooping around. So that was like one of my first hurdles. Like, he didn't do what you had wanted him to do to basically, link up with us to clear his name. And then on our end, there were also some meetups. Yeah, he should have done what he was supposed to do in order to clear his name, and he didn't. And I was like, okay, this is bad for him. He's not even trying to clear his name. He's actually doing the opposite. He's doing what everybody else does. As soon as they know we're on to them, they start fleeing, they start dipping, they physically start running from any kind of plainclothes units they see. Like, yeah, it was bad. And I will say that at that time, you had really tapped into that circle with different cliques and stuff. And then you also had tapped into a branch of, I'll just say, like, gangster disciples.
I was not well liked there.
What's that?
I was not well liked.
Yeah. Well, but in your area, those mugs were heavy. And it was one of those things where I knew eventually those wires were going to cross in our area, which they did. There were 2 or 3 shootings that, we had involved GDs and other people. And I was just like, dude, based on all this stuff, these are going to be our suspects because they stand out. Like we've talked about. And for those people listening, if you can lock in on solid gang intel, like where you can chart out entire chapters or entire sets or cliques or tribes, if it's Latin Kings, pick the gang, and you walk in and have gang intel and be like, I'm looking for 3 dudes that are probably linked to this gang. These are their physical descriptors, and they're known to drive a whatever, fill in the blank, like a Blazer or something, whatever it is. And then go to your chart, gang intel, and be like, all right, I just narrowed it down to these guys. Boom. Okay, well, what do we know about them? They actually operate in our city, but they're also operating in this area. Let me hit up this dude. That was kind of like that for me, that was those are the strong suits for you. Like, there were certain areas I knew, all right, I can call you and you'd be like, yeah.
The
that
South.
dude.
I had the South. I was in the dirty South. I had the South. That's what I called it. I called it the Dirty 30.
Oh my gosh, man. You were a great resource. That was, we were talking before we started recording, but like some of the connections, even going all the way back then, I'll go and do presentations with a prosecutor who is an incredible dude who used to run intel meetings when you and I used to go out to a different area we didn't even work in. We'd go to a different county.
Yep.
But that guy would run some gang intel meetings that were incredible. Yep. And he's worked cases directly tied into gang members, either assaulting law enforcement officers or tied into murders or tied into like larger, almost like OSADEF cases or RICO cases. Just incredible dude, man. But it clicked, man, early on. And he was joking not too long ago, just in general, about he'll still throw terms out that we used to talk about in those meetings. And he's like, man, it works every time. Yep. I don't know. I dig that stuff. And I like that prosecutors that are motivated get in the game, officers, deputies, agents. I'd like to see more leadership go to meetings or take it upon themselves to learn something about the gang culture so that they can, design their own strategies to go after them.
Yep. And hitting on that, it also comes from, some of the higher ups they get up to a certain, level when it's almost political.
Mm-hmm.
And, what is bad for business is admitting you have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So admitting that you have a gang problem is bad for business. So
Yeah.
that's, and I think that's when I was at the place I was at, I think that was a lot of the problem. They didn't want to admit it. They had their babies, and the gangs was not one of them. And back to, prosecutors, your prosecutors have to be in those meetings 100%,
Mhm.
so they can hear it. So when they're, talking in front of a judge or a jury, they're not getting the facts wrong. They know it, and you can be like, man, these dudes know just as much as the police know.
Mhm.
And if they don't, then it's not going to be believable. Like the prosecutor, if any kind of prosecutor that is prosecuting the gun crimes, the murders, anything out of district court, man, if they're especially in the gang, like they need to be in those gang intel meetings every
Mhm.
single time, listening to those officers every single time. Like that's
Yeah,
just
I couldn't agree more. I've got prosecutors in other parts of the country that take the virtual courses I've got and stuff, and they're plugged in. I just, to me, and I've talked to sheriffs and police chiefs in multiple different agencies, and that's what I always say is like identifying that you got gangs in your city or your county. That's easy, and then the strategy is even easier because you're addressing it. I mean, imagine if the U.S. Department of Defense said, "We don't really want to know about terrorist organizations." It's like,
yeah,
well, that's kind of what you specialize in for the last 20 years.
it's pretty
Like
scary.
these organizations pose a direct threat to citizens. Yeah, but we're not busy. We don't want to know about that because we don't really have a strategy how to. Well, you can develop the strategy once you start knowing more about it. And so I try to explain to them the easiest thing to do. And I don't care what you want to call your units. You can call them community squads. You can call them whatever. I don't care. Like threat assessment groups, whatever you're worried about the buzzwords, but let people do what they do best. Have a gang intel, have proactive gang teams, and then you go after it. And then you focus it. You put that organization on their heels. And how do you do that? Multiple arrests, very focused, very strategic, have sit downs. You do a search warrant at a house. You sit there and talk for 20, 30 minutes with gang members, and you let them know this is the future of your life. There's going to be search warrants. There's going to be car stops. We're going to seize cars whenever we can. All these things are going to continue until you decide you're not going to be violent. I don't care whether you're a gang member. I don't care if someone joins your gang. I only care if you commit violence. If that continues, then the arrests are only going to triple. And you know what? And you know this, and I know that it works. It slows them down. Nobody really on the street wants to join the set that's hot, that everybody's getting arrested, that it's either in the news or is on the federal side of like OSADEF cases or RICO cases,
Yeah. They don't
or
want
even
no
on the
Rico.
state level. Yeah, like oh yeah.
They don't want no Rico gangs.
Well, that's why I had to tell my higher ups, like I need y'all to understand we've never done a RICO. We're gonna do one. It's gonna be the first one in this part of the state, but that this is the atom bomb in the gang world. Like if someone gets RICO'd, it puts everybody else on notice. Every other gang, you're next.
It's
So
crippling.
then they will self-correct as best they can. And if the higher ups can't control the young ones, they're going to kick them out of the set. They're going to excommunicate them. And others would be like, "Oh, well, that's going to make them more violent." Shut up. Just listen to what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
you have a plan in place, and you start hammering them, and you
Yep.
literally can take a very violent county or city, and within a year or less, watch those numbers drop.
I
And
think
I
they
mean,
don't
like
want
I
to
said,
put the
you know
time
it, and
into
I
it.
know it. But what's that?
I don't think they want to put the time into it.
Well, and
The
that's the thing
Rico.
too, because they know, or let me back up. Maybe they don't know. They just make a stupid association in their brain that if you have a proactive unit going after career criminals, the chances of making a news story are higher. But if I would argue, and I've got proof, if that unit is well trained and you pick the right people who have a very level head and can react to fire calmly and that sort of thing and treat people right, you're not going to have the news stories because they're going to have the strength in numbers. So they're going to have enough people in the unit to do what they do best, get people apprehended, recover guns, and explain to them, hey, we're actually 3 times larger than what you see. Like, that's what we used to tell people when we were in the gang unit. Like, you see us in the inner perimeter, but we already had 2 or 3 blocks covered. So you can keep running. You get that outer perimeter, you're going to start messing around with like K9 units and stuff. And they're like, bro, no, like, y'all roll up. We're not running. We'll lay down, and you start to condition, hey, we're on the winning end. And leaders, I think, need to have confidence in their people and willing to put their own spines on the line to say, hey, my people are the best trained in the state or whatever, the county, city, and I'm willing to go to bat for them. And I'm also trying to, run a department that's gonna push violent crime down. I don't really care about anything else. Like, no, I mean, yeah, we care about car break-ins and burglars, but man, you can do something about gang versus gang violence, or even area versus area violence. Like, if you've got a hotel that's hot, somebody better be working that thing. You better know everything about that hotel, stash spots, every person on the staff, who's flipped and been compromised by the gang, like all that stuff.
I think you're spot on. I think as much as you need the gang unit, the jump out squad or whatever, I don't think that's where it's at. In my opinion, I think it's intel and surveillance. And then, you need the people to stop them so they know who you are for the intel, but intel's where it's at. 100% intel, where you can debrief and start connecting the dots. Not people like names start with G on the unit that were well known in the area.
No. It was kind of interesting. Like, every class that name gets dropped, and I'd have to be like, whoa.
Yep.
Even the informants I would bring in would start dropping it. I'm like, y'all got to stop. Like,
but that's a tool, because if you say like, well, I don't agree with that guy, I don't agree with how he treated you, then they're like, all right, this dude's a real dude, and you don't, little things, man, you don't always, smell what you should smell in their car, and let little things go, and they're like, man, he ain't that bad. Like, he's really just trying to, he's trying to, knock the violence down in the area. Like, you don't care about that dime bag, man, or some little BS stuff, or I got a warrant, but he ain't hunting me. He said we'll meet up next week. Let me get my money right. Stuff like that. That's all it is.
Well, when you talked about like gang intel versus jump out versus all that, the best a department can do, I don't care when people talk about being short staffed and stuff. Like, I get it, I understand that, but if you got a good gang intel side, you got a good proactive side, and then you've got some type of ties potentially on the federal side with a task force position or something, you could completely destroy what's out there. But it does have to be, you got to have like the gang intel side as well as the proactive side, and put those together, man. And that's the thing too, that what I would explain to higher ups too is like, you got to have a deep bench. Like in sports, you got to have the replacements lined up, and you have to teach the next string, so to speak. So next season they're solid. It's like, you can't just have the gang guy on the department. You can't have like that one officer deputy rolling around by themselves trying to do gang work, and then you depend on them. Like, in your agency, they would depend on you and be like, well, he's got it, he knows. Guess what? When he leaves and goes to another agency, you now have to rebuild whatever you got. And a lot of times it doesn't happen. Nobody starts to work it again. And then that spike goes back up, and same in the same cycle and in my agency, it was the same thing. Like, we had so many people into it, and then they kept scaling back. And it's like, you got to stop doing that. Like, you can't, because people are going to come out of these units and become sergeants and lieutenants and move up the rank to where now, one of my buddies is now in charge of the department that I came from, like that I retired from. And you go back in his history, and he was on the first gang unit, first street level gang suppression unit. So it's incredible to have that guy take over the entire department. And he's a great guy. I talk about him all the time, but have that street background coupled with highly intelligent and knowing the overall structure, like this is what we got to keep in place and build these units back up and keep stuff running. I don't know. It was just, I like seeing that, or I like seeing some of these cats out here that are young. I say young, like in their 30s, running for sheriff and stuff, in different counties across the U.S. And they're trying to bring it back. Like, we're crime fighters. We're going after, if it's out by the border, they're going after cartels, or they're going after human trafficking, or a lot of sheriffs in the South now that are getting reelected and stuff. And they're going, hey, we got to go after gangs, or we got to go after these, motorcycle clubs too. They're huge all over the East Coast and the Southern states. But anyway, well, look, dude, I'm glad you made time for me in your busy schedule and jumped on the mic. We'll jot down some notes for a future episode and maybe tell a few stories. You're a bit of a storyteller.
Yeah. Let me know. We'll do another one. I'm
yes,
not down. We need to get another guy or two up here with some storytellers from back in the day.
To get another what now?
Another couple of guys up here from the gang unit.
Yeah.
Some storytellers.
We'll do that. We'll tap in. There are a few people that I've approached, and they're still a little bit nervous, and I get it, So but we can always not turn your camera on and just hear your voice and speak in generalities if we need to. But yeah, we'll do some story time, man.
Yeah, let me know anytime. I enjoyed it. I was nervous, but it'll be all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, obviously that makes sense, but all right, buddy. Well, look, hey, take care, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.